Earlier this year, Islamic State fighters detonated a car bomb outside a prison in northeastern Syria. As fires raged, militants stormed the jail. Inside, inmates rioted, and scores of suspected ISIS fighters escaped. It took over a week for US-backed Kurdish-led militia to seize back control.
Scores are dead after a mass prison break at a jail holding suspected ISIS fighters in Syria.
It was the group's boldest attack since 2019, when an international coalition pushed ISIS out of its self-declared caliphate. Victory was declared.
We knocked out the 100% of the ISIS caliphate.
And tens of thousands who had fought or lived under ISIS were rounded up and put in prisons and detention camps. But there are fears that those captured are using their time in detention to keep the ideology alive. Time and time again, prisons have proven to be incubators for jihadism.
Britain's top security jails, housing radical Islamist leaders, are becoming breeding grounds for their violent ideology.
During the Iraq War, the detention of men at Kambuka, a US military prison, was key to the formation of ISIS.
At least 12 of the top leaders of ISIS served time at Camp Bucca.
Today, some worry history could be repeating.
The unmitigated detention crisis across Iraq and Syria is a huge blind spot that is going to come back to bite us.
Among those detained, thousands of children left to grow up alongside hardened militants.
In another video, young boys chant that they'll crush the heads of non-believers.
So why has ISIS been given the opportunity to enlist its next generation of fighters? This is how the terror group is using prisons to prepare its comeback, and how governments who spent billions on the fight against ISIS are turning a blind eye. In March 2003, a US-led coalition invaded Iraq.
On my orders, coalition forces have begun striking selected targets of military importance to undermine Saddam Hussein's ability to wage war.
A man called Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi was swept up in a raid targeting men who had taken up arms against the occupation and taken to Camp Bucca, a US-run military prison.
Camp Bucca, the United States' biggest detention facility in Iraq. There are more than 19,000 civilian detainees.
It was here that Baghdadi would sow the seeds of ISIS, the terror group he would later come to lead.
Most of the senior leadership and probably a good portion of the mid-level management and foot soldiers came from Bucca.
Camp Bucca allowed Baghdadi to network with Al-Qaeda's leadership and recruits.
There are 24 camps. He was allowed open access to all of them.
Now, as tens of thousands of individuals who lived in the caliphate remain in limbo in northeastern Syria, many are seeing a parallel.
The kind of interaction and grooming that occurred with what would become major ISIS leaders is being replicated.
Like Camp Bucca, hardline militants are held in a melting pot with desperate individuals.
This is just a hodgepodge of people from different places.
You have supporters and victims all kind of stuck into one big mix.
You need to separate out those who are radicalized and those who are potential targets of radicalization.
One problem is that the Syrian Democratic Forces who were left to manage these facilities don't know who's who.
They don't have IDs or details on all of the detainees that they have. It's a huge intelligence problem.
In the prisons, hundreds of boys are kept alongside hardened adult fighters.
Are there any kids in here?
We've seen little boys and men all being held, in one large crowded room.
It's very dangerous for these young children to be held with adults. These children are really incredibly vulnerable.
Recruiting and brainwashing these boys is top of ISIS's agenda.
ISIS has needed to find a way to continue to breathe life into its idea of a caliphate. This is where you see the ISIS emphasis on what it calls the cubs of the caliphate, which are underage boys.
In the sprawling detention camps, thousands of families live in fear.
Killing has become a daily occurrence here. Almost every day, they kill 1 or 2 people at the camp.
A young child who is, a victim in this situation where they have complete insecurity. This is what leads to engagement in violent extremism down the line.
What we've done is create a vacuum where the only future maybe a young person can think about in these camps is something like ISIS.
The harsh conditions in the camp also serve to fuel ISIS's propaganda machine.
The Islamic State can use the poor humanitarian conditions in the camp as a propaganda tool to basically say, look, our women, our children are being indiscriminately persecuted by the SDF, by the Crusaders, etc., etc.
In April 2015, 8-year-old Matthew travelled with his family from the US to the Syrian city of Raqqa to join ISIS. Matthew became the face of ISIS propaganda against America.
My message to Trump, get ready, for the fighting has just begun.
A victim of his parents' desires to join the caliphate.
It was hard. I didn't want to do it.
Matthew has since been rehabilitated into American life.
What's the best thing about being home?
Everything. Just everything.
But for thousands of other children brought to Syria, the future is less hopeful.
The SDF have explicitly asked governments to take back their nationals time and time again. Whether it's experts on radicalization or intelligence services, the consensus is really that bringing them back is the much safer, more prudent long and midterm option.
Governments globally pretend they are not here.
There's really no plan for them whatsoever.
Governments think in shorter terms, so they'll kick it down the can to the next government.
Some countries, like the UK, have gone as far as strip citizenship from some of their nationals.
In the end, it turned out for me, it was a very clear-cut decision.
It's such a politically sensitive issue that no politician wants to be the first to sort of, stick their hand up to actively repatriate their nationals.
Some governments say there is not enough evidence for prosecutions at home, but this excuse can be unfounded.
ISIS kept really detailed records, and those records have been confiscated. So we do have lots of evidence that can be used to prosecute foreign terrorist fighters.
The real challenge has been convincing the public.
They go to Syria, we take the passport.
Mais ils oublient une chose, vous parlez d'eux comme si c'était des ennemis, c'est des citoyens aussi. C'est bien ça que la directive.
We have a sense of what works in terms of disengaging somebody from violent extremism. We just haven't been willing to apply it to this group of people. The resistance to even bringing children back, I think, is an enormous failure of societies.
In the wake of the US withdrawal from Afghanistan, Islamic State militants escaped prison alongside Taliban members, as this clip appears to show. Just days later, as Afghans rushed to flee the country, one escapee detonated a suicide bomb outside Kabul airport. Hundreds were killed. The attack showed how militants can exploit instability to break out of prisons, with devastating consequences. Prison breaks have long been a key strategy for jihadists. In the wake of the US's departure from Iraq in 2011, ISIS launched a series of attacks on prisons.
Militants wearing suicide vests then entered the compound and helped free the inmates.
The climax was a simultaneous raid on jails in Taji and Abu Ghraib.
Hundreds of prisoners escaped Abu Ghraib prison during a violent prison breakout.
Attacks paved the way to the capture of Mosul and then subsequently the declaration of the Caliphate in 2014.
In recent years, to regain momentum, the Islamic State has continued to orchestrate prison breaks.
They've been happening all over, from West Africa to Southeast Asia.
The ISIS campaign against prisons and detention facilities is a global emphasis for the ISIS organization.
In every leadership statement that the Islamic State has published since 2019, Prisons have always been a priority issue.
Not only do they help ISIS replenish its ranks, they also help energize global supporters.
It features in their propagandas frequently, and it is an important aspect for the group.
The scale of the latest attack in Syria in January 2022 proved what happens when the threat of prisons is overlooked.
We are surprised every single time that happens, which should not be the case.
And when the responsibility of guarding prisoners is left to a militia force in an impoverished breakaway region of Syria.
They've really been reaching out to the international community for help on these issues, and it's unfortunately largely gone ignored.
The attack also demonstrated the group's eagerness and growing capability to return.
This one in particular was being framed as a new kind of episode in the apocalyptic war of the Islamic State.
The recent attack was testament to the fact that ISIS does have the capacity to regroup, and they have this sort of strategic patience to be able to make sure that their priority leaders and operatives will at some point be able to rejoin the fight.
In February 2022, the leader of ISIS was killed in an operation by US Special Forces.
Thanks to the bravery of our troops, this horrible terrorist leader is no more.
But these military victories do not equate ideological defeat.
Defeating the group militarily is not enough because the group can always come back.
As the world looks away, ISIS continues to capitalize on those detained.
Detention facilities are a necessary evil, and it's that lack of priority attention and lack of resourcing that presents an opportunity for ISIS. And my fear is that we're going to look back on this period and say, man, I really wish we had done more.